This is the Blackout podcast.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ashley, we met when we worked on the poem for the Lunenburg Doc Fest. That was a great experience. Yeah. And I remember reaching out to you. I'm like, oh, by the way, I have this thing. I don't know you from anywhere, but people were talking about you. And the poem that actually made me contact you was one you did at the parade. It was like for LGBTQI thing. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what it was for, but I was like, oh shit, I want this present. So I reached out to you and I was hoping you'd say yes, and then you said yes. And you have this thing where I notice most creative people have where they feel like, I don't feel I'm the right person. And I was thinking, is she serious? Because the poem you gave me, oh my God, it was beautiful. And the performance at the festival, it was like just icing on the cake. Thanks. I've actually not thanked you in person since we did that. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So, God damn, you do a lot of things. So I know you're studying. Mm-hmm. I know you're a mom. I know you recently got engaged. I know you're all about prison reform and justice, and you're all about you do a lot. How do you make all that work?
That's a good question. I don't even know the answer to that. I don't like to be bored. I don't like downtime. So I feel like I always have to be doing something. So of course, I have my 9-to-5 job where I really have made sure that the work I'm doing in my career is something I'm passionate about. So it's fulfilling and I enjoy doing it. But then I never feel like it's enough. So I'm always, looking for that next project or looking for something else to do. And of course I'm a mom. So, you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose that life. I have to take care of my family and my daughter, so I always find time for that. But, my daughter's amazing. She's always right by my side with whatever I'm doing. So, she knows my university like the back of her hand. She could give people tours because she knows. she knows her way around there. She sat in on women's studies classes, and so we're just really close. We have a close relationship, and so she's able to be flexible, and that's how I make things happen.
I didn't bring up the superstar of your Instagram, actually, Jackson.
Yeah. Yes.
How long have you had him?
Jackson is 2. So we got him from Toronto a few years ago. He was a gift for my daughter. Oh. And of course, he has imprinted on me. He chose me as his favorite. So even though I bought him for my daughter, he's always right by my side. He's always wants to be on my lap. And when I'm not home, he's whining for me. So he's my little best friend.
Yeah, he takes the best pictures though. And he's comfortable all the time.
He's so photogenic. Yeah, he's handsome.
It's funny. It's almost like his pictures go up in the morning and I'm like, I have to go to work, and this guy is just chilling. I don't know how you feel, but I swear to God, I feel like that all the time.
I know. I get out of bed and he just lays there and watches me like, your life sucks.
So, how did you get into poetry?
So I had moved back to Halifax and started working in social services. So I was working in a women's shelter and a women's halfway house, and just trying to get to know the community again. I mean, I was from Halifax, but I had been gone for a long time. So I was trying to get to know my community.
Where did you move to?
I was in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
For work? Or?
That's where I had my daughter.
Okay,
so that's where I was living at the time, and that's where I went to school originally, was in Toronto. Yeah. So I was, back in Halifax and in this new role of supporting women in the community. And I mean, I had always been a creative writer. I hadn't written poetry specifically, but I always knew that I was good at expressing myself through writing because I've always been very shy and introverted, and so that was how I expressed myself. And so part of my job at Coverdale was to go into the prison in Burnside and to support women. And so I would meet women in a room, similar to this size, and we would sit at this table, and I was there to provide support and to help women find resources. But what ended up happening is, women just kind of would come to the table and, they would tell me their stories. They would tell me their life stories, and they would cry, and we would, grieve together, and we were experiencing all these things. And, it's hard work, and it's really heavy and emotional. And at the end of the day, when you're new to this field, you don't really know what to do with all of those feelings, and it's hard to process it. And I just felt so angered by what everyone was experiencing. And so I sat down, and this poem just kind of came to me. I had never written a poem like that before. I had never performed spoken word poetry before, and I just put my hand to paper, and this poem called Prison Tables came out, and so that was the first poem I ever really wrote. And
oh wow, it is. Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah,
this.
So that's why it's really special to me, because it was just
Well, when you said it's if your favorite poem, I just thought because it's super powerful, and just it's graphic.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was the first one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's been downhill since.
Well, it's special to me, this poem.
Yeah, I know, because I'm kidding. Like how will you honor your land? It's when I want to make a film, it always starts with me. To me, I'm weird in that I need to have the title. When I want to start writing a script, I need a title. It could be weird. I might change the title later, but usually I don't, to be honest. If it starts with a title, it ends it. So when you sent me that poem, it gripped me. And the things you were saying, like the cadence in your voice, and just, it was fun working on that project. I try to have fun when I make film, but it was just fun working on that project. And yeah, I'm glad we came up with that. Yeah. So yeah, no, I was kidding with the downhill thing. I was kidding with the downhill
each project I do is so different, but that one, it always resonates with me because it's kind of where I got my start in spoken word, and that's how I found this outlet to sort of voice what my feelings and my emotions, and to tell a story to people who I wouldn't normally sit down and tell that story to, but because it's performed in this very artistic way, it gave me that outlet to feel comfortable to do that. So. And
what was the first time you performed spoken word?
The first time, so I had written that poem, and the following week was our AGM, our annual general meeting for the organization, and I performed it at the AGM. Oh. And everybody cried in the room. Yeah,
it's super powerful. It's just... Yeah, it grips you, and it's, we live in Canada, and Canada is great, right? We have all these amazing things, but there's some things we don't know, or we know and don't want to talk about, and just like what's happening in prisons, it's not as bad as some. I guess that's the thing. You know how you compare things and you think, oh yeah, it's not that bad, but it is bad, right? Mm-hmm. But then you be like, it's not as bad as those people are having it, so we are okay. But if we just take it in of itself and we are being subjective about it, it's not good what people are experiencing.
Yeah, exactly. People have this conception that, Canada is this multicultural hub, and, we're so friendly here, and we're so kind, and everything is all good here, when in fact, there's racism, there's discrimination, and there's poverty, and there's, we have so many problems with prison and mass incarceration, and there's so many issues that people just think, well, Canada is an amazing place to live and to be, but, when you peel away sort of the layers, there's so much going on and so much to talk about and so much work to be done.
When I moved out here, we lived in Toronto for a while, and you don't know, because I lived in South Africa. South Africa is another thing on its own, and there's a prison it looks amazing from a distance because it's built into a hill, right? But then you actually into a mountain to be, I think. But then you realize why it's built there. It's like, it's way out of town. Unless I guess if you're into mountain climbing, you really don't have any reason to be there. So we take these people, sure, they did something they weren't supposed to do, but prison is supposed to be for rehabilitating, right? How are you going to rehabilitate people when you treat them like they're animals in the zoo? So like with that, it's like, oh, it's South Africa. You know, they have a bad history. And then I moved here and I'm living in Truro. And so there's this woman's prison up there. And you don't know it's there because it's like, oh, what is that building over there doing? And, you know, I never knew. And I lived there for almost a year and I never knew. It's one of those things where if it's not affecting you, we really don't care.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key with prison. People, you know, it's out of sight, out of mind. But the interesting thing about the prison in Truro is that it's very close to the reserve. And so when we look at incarceration in Nova Scotia, we have an overrepresentation of Indigenous women in our prisons. And then, you know, they literally built a prison right next to an Indigenous reserve. So it's
you know, it grips you because you literally, that's the road where you have to drive to that reserve. Yeah,
exactly,
you're right. You see, you don't realize these things until someone points and then it's like, oh yeah, you know, that's true. And tell me a little bit about Talk Justice.
So Talk Justice is a community engagement strategy that started, 3 or 4 years ago at the Barrister Society. And it was meant to be a way to sort of center the public in justice reform. So what's going on in the community? We have an access to justice issue in Nova Scotia. And so instead of, just trying to figure out what the issues are, we need to speak to community and ask them what the issues are and what are your experiences. And so Talk Justice, it started as a hashtag Talk Justice. So it's trying to engage people in the conversation so we can understand people's experiences, understand what the barriers are for them when it comes to accessing justice or getting justice. And so it's really grown over the years. It started, just as a small sort of research project, and now it's really grown, and we call it the grown-up version of Talk Justice now. So now we're doing new projects. We're doing a docu-series with Limia Reddick, who is a community consultant from North Preston, and we're doing lots of exciting things, just trying to get people involved and look at the issues together and try and come up with some solutions together as a community, and not just look to the government to make the changes that we want, but how can we make some changes on the ground that will be immediate and that will, make it easier for people to navigate the system.
Yeah. And it's funny how these days is a hashtag. Hashtags are actually, I know there are people that feel, or even there are memes where, I'm going to save the world, I'll just tweet a hashtag. But if it's actually getting people to start talking about things, I think there's a power there, So I'm not going to knock something that is working. At least it's getting things moving from where they were before, So I'm all for that. And then, so what's the justice system like now? What's the reform you think we need?
Well, what we heard from people through Talk Justice was that there's, racism, discrimination in the system. The judiciary is white people. And so if you're not white and you're in the justice system, how can you get justice if you don't see yourself reflected in the system? Or, if you're being judged by a jury of your peers, but your peers aren't reflected in that jury. If you are experiencing poverty, well, how can you pay for a lawyer? How can you have adequate representation if you literally can't afford justice? So, there's all of these issues that are really rooted in grassroots issues, like people not having enough money and people just not being able to have transportation to even get to the court. There's so many issues.
Yeah. It must be heartbreaking, dealing with this every day. Yeah. And tasking on your mental health and your health. How do you cope, I guess?
I mean, I've found different ways over the years. You know, poetry and spoken word really has been at the root of that. Like I said, it's a way for me to get all of my emotion and anger and sort of this rawness that's in me out and to, you know, to talk with other people. You know, my family takes care of me, so that's really important as well. And sometimes I'm just not well. Like sometimes I just don't take care of myself, and my mental health does suffer. And I think that's, you know, something we need to talk about as well. Like, you know, we know what self-care is, and we know we need to do it, but I don't always do it. And so, you know, sometimes I just need to take that time and to, you know, I kind of can recognize like, all right, I'm not well right now. What do I need to do to get myself back there? So it's always a learning process every single time.
I know what you mean.
It's not like a cookie cutter method of like, you know, take a bubble bath or, you know, do some yoga. Like,
and so how old is your daughter?
She's 9.
So, and then how long has your relationship been now?
My relationship has been 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How did you guys meet? I'm curious.
We met at work.
Oh, okay.
So we both used to work at the women's shelter together, and so that's where we met. And then I left not long after that to go work for a different organization, but she still works there, and she works in housing and homelessness. So
yeah, you guys. I mean, yeah, a great match. That it's always great when you are with someone that either is doing the same thing or at least understands what you're doing, because when you're passionate about something and then you're with someone that doesn't get it, it can be tough. But working in women's shelter must just be hectic, you know.
Yeah.
I was just working on it's still in the pre-production phase, just talking to people about this project I'm doing, and it's just the things that some women have to deal with daily is, I guess, you know, being a man, you don't even think of it. It's like it doesn't even cross. And then some of those things make it online, and then you read it and think, oh shit, I didn't. Like, when you realize how if as a man I can walk out on the street or whatever, I don't need to worry about who is looking at me funny or whatever. I'm just taking a stroll. But if I'm a woman, I have to think of 5 different things that could possibly go wrong and might actually happen, and then you actually have to deal with that. Like, people that have experienced that happen to them at work, I can't even imagine it.
Yeah, it's a lot to be a woman, especially.
I can't
imagine. It's hard.
Yeah, I can't imagine it, because a friend of mine works at a shelter, and I did some work at a shelter in South Africa, but that was more for gay people. Yeah. So there are some parallels that I understand, but it's just I can't imagine it. So this person was telling me of a woman, right, that pretty much maybe every week is stretching it, but at least once a month the cops have to come. She's bloodied, she falls down something happens, and she finally managed to make it to a shelter, right? And then she left, and then a part of me is like, okay, but she knows this is happening and she's dealing with all this craziness, and all she has to do is leave. But then the part of me kind of understands over time now, at least I think the me now is me better than a few years ago, because I understand that learned helplessness is just a thing, right? Where you get to the point where, this is my life now, and this is what I have to get used to, and this is my new normal. Mm-hmm. How does your work help people like that?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I mean, the thing that's like going on in Halifax right now is there's a housing crisis, and so we have all of these shelters and services for women, but there's not enough to help people to transition out of shelters. So women are already experiencing trauma and abuse and, the side effects of poverty. Maybe they have issues in the criminal court, maybe they're dealing with family court issues as well. So there's all of these compounding things that are happening in a woman's life, and then they end up homeless in a shelter, or whether it's a homeless shelter or a shelter for women who are fleeing abuse. There's no housing strategy. There's nowhere for people to go. So you just kind of get stuck living in this pretty precarious situation where you just rely on, or you just live sort of day to day, really, is what's happening. Oh, wow. And so, all you can do in those situations is just meet people where they're at and try and, provide them with as much support as you can. But it's very frustrating when you're a worker and you're trying to help people, but you don't have the tools to help them. And so it's, it weighs really heavily on you. But I do have to say my partner was made for this line of work. Like she's really good at doing just that, like just helping people to get through those crises and those tough situations, sort of clearing the clouds so that they can, see some light at the end of the tunnel and to get them where they need to be. So.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's
tough.
Great. It's great that we have people like you and all these shelters that do these things. And it's actually funny because a lot of buildings are going up in Halifax. So when you say there's a housing crisis, what's happening? Like, can't we just, put up one place downtown and put all these people? It's like, that's something that wouldn't happen, or?
Yeah, when I say housing crisis, I mean affordable housing crisis.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of housing. Yeah. They're building all, you see them.
Isn't there something the government or like a body can do?
Yes, there is. Write your MP, write your prime minister, write your politicians. Like, yeah, there are things that they can do, of course, but are they doing those things? No, not necessarily. And the other component to it is that, when you have women who have been living in poverty for so long, or who have been criminalized, maybe they've been in prison, and you just, take them they become sort of institutionalized. So when you take them out of this support where, they have care all of the time, and then they move out into the community and have their own place, and all of a sudden there's no supports. And so what ends up happening is that people end up, back in prison or back in the shelter. And so, we don't just need affordable housing. That's a fucked up cycle, though. We need more, we need sort of wraparound services. So, people can live independently in the community, but still have resources available to them. So it's such a web of issues that need help.
I guess in your work, you see that most of these women that go through this are traditionally non-white, people of color.
There's a mix, right? I think, what we know is that Black and Indigenous people of all genders are overrepresented in the system. So meaning that based on the percentage of them that are in society, there's more in prison. But there's a mixture, right? Of course, there's white women in prison. There's, but the statistics are showing, there's more Black and Indigenous people who are being incarcerated. And so, why is that?
So, it's funny. I still don't know the legal aspect of this. How does, I think, aren't Indigenous people like, or is it only the people that stay on the reserve that have their own legal, like an Indigenous legal hearing thing when there's a crime that happens? Or then people outside the reserve are like, they actually have to go to courts that aren't Indigenous? I'm not sure how does that work? So
in Nova Scotia, certainly on Indigenous land, they have their own practices. but the provincial and federal laws are still they still have to attend court in a provincial court or federal court, whatever it is. Okay. Yeah,
there's a lot of learning to do. Okay, that got heavy.
It tends to happen when I'm around.
So, and tell me about joining the slam team. How did that happen?
So yeah, the slam team, that was really fun. So how it happens in Halifax is you just go to, there's, 2 slams or 3 slams, and you go, and whoever sort of makes the cut after each competition, makes the team. And so, I went to the 3 slams, and I ended up being on the team with some really other fantastic poets. And we went to Peterborough in Ontario and competed at the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word. So poets from all over Canada come, and they call it Poet Camp because it's just like an intense week it's like poet boot camp of just learning from all different types of people, learning different styles of poetry, and hearing, people from all over Canada. And so it was such an amazing experience. It was incredibly draining, because you're constantly ripping your emotions out and putting them on paper, and everybody else is kind of doing the same thing. So it's very intense, but it was a really cool experience, and we did pretty good. I mean, we came first place in one of the rounds. We didn't make it to finals, but we had a lot of fun doing it. And
so that's not something you really do now, because you really don't have, is it something you still do? Is it something you want to do again? Will it happen?
I think it was one of those experiences that was like, okay, I can check that off my list of things that I've done. There is an individual competition that happens in Vancouver every year, and I think not this year, but maybe next year, I would like to look into going to that and just compete as an individual.
Yeah, so with the slams, do you have to memorize your poems, or is it like you create it on the spot, or you're allowed to read from paper or your phone?
You can read.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They try and be as, it's very inclusive. So, of course, not everybody has the ability to memorize. Yeah. Not everybody has the ability to read off of paper. So it's really what you're comfortable with. Okay. The rules are that it has to be 3 minutes or under, and you can't use any props or anything like that. So,
okay, so it has to,
and it has
do
to
they
be,
give a theme or whatever?
No, it can be whatever you want it to be. So, yeah.
And so other than the EGM, have you performed prison tables anywhere else?
I've performed that everywhere.
I want to ask, there was, I think it was last year, towards the ending, there was this, I couldn't come to it. So it was a collection of all these amazing poets in Halifax. I can't remember what the event was called. It was like September, October-ish. Okay. How was that? What was that about, the event?
What? I don't know.
I think there's this local poet. I can't remember her name, but it was you, this lady that does amazing poetry, and then there were 2 other people, and it was like just talking about poetry, but then you guys also performed your poems. I know you've been to many of those.
I know.
But there was one, I mean, if I remember this lady's name, you definitely know it. She was once the Halifax poet person.
Was it Elle Jones?
Yes, huh?
Oh, okay.
Yes. That one.
Yeah, I can't think of what event you're thinking about specifically, but I have performed with Elle a few times. Elle is, she's my teacher and she's my mentor, an amazing, amazing person. And it's always an honor to perform with Elle because she is, she's done so much for the spoken word scene and for, the social justice scene in Halifax. So it's intimidating, but it's always fun to be around her.
Yeah, it's just like singing an older version of you performing, because she's pretty much into the same things you talk about, and it's like she does it in our spoken word too, so it's like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah,
she's I admire her so much. She's incredible. Yeah.
And how often do you write, and what's your process when it comes to writing?
Writing for me is something that it's either there or it's not. Like, I could go a few months and not be able to put anything down on paper. Writing for me, like I said, it's a very emotional piece of, you know, my identity. And so if I'm feeling something and, you know, I can feel it kind of brewing, then it just comes to me and I'll put it down on paper, and it just sort of happens like in one shot. It's either there or it's not. And so I'm very good at writing under pressure. So
yeah, I remember so I told you about this project 3 months before. I was like, oh yeah, by the way, so we had to shoot. I think we had to shoot in August because Lunenburg Doc Fest was September, and then I had to have a complete shoot, film made, because then you had to go get colored, all that cool things that they do at current studios, and then so I think I told you like June and July. Actually, I think it was like late May. I was like, oh, and you're like, oh, sure, yeah, and then I was like, okay, you know, you're working. Family, you have a life, so this is just something that just happened and it's not like priority right now, so I wouldn't reach out for a month, right? So I let like 3-4 weeks pass, and then I was like, hey, by the way, you know, this thing is still happening. Plus I remember it wasn't before I actually contacted you, I wasn't sure I was going to make it because it's like a competition, whatever. And then I got the go ahead, and I reached out to you right away. I was like, I need to, actually, before you even agreed, I was like, I need to tell them that I have my point. And you're like, oh, yeah, sure you can. I was like, okay, then I needed you to give me some things. That took a while. I got them. And then I was like, oh, yeah, by the way, so I need to write a film based on what you're saying. So I need to at least have an idea. I was like, you know what? It's going to happen. I got it like 1 week before we went to shoot. but it came together great. It was amazing. I mean, I don't want to say, you know, I don't want to say that we made the best one, but I think we made the best one.
I mean,
no, because
I was really happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, and the film was great. Oh my god, you know, it's crazy because we all got the same budget and we went crazy. We had a drone shot. We went all over Lunenburg, and someone had a picture of a baby. What the? I was actually, I don't want to say I was pissed off because, you know, that's how he interpreted the story and whatever. But like, I've still not asked the other directors what was the reason or like the story behind their films. But I just felt if the title or the theme was Times and Tide Lunenburg, you should do something about Lunenburg. Out of the 4 films, there was only 2 people that did something with Lunenburg, and then one was just a fucking baby. Like, nothing against babies, but Jesus, come on.
She was a cute baby.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll give the baby that.
I do love babies.
I'll give the baby that, but it was just a shot of a baby. That was a film. There's a shot of a baby. Oh my god. Oh, but the writer of the lead for our poem was cool. And when we made that one, I was like, oh yeah, okay, we have to make another one. And then you've given me, so now who is stalling now? Is it me or you?
That's all you. See, you asked me how I survive as a busy person, and this is it. I need to like block my time out. So if I say I'm going to do something, I 100% am going to do it, but it's going to be done like...
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I mean...
But I came through in the end.
And it was great. And then, you know, it was just watching you there in front of that big screen perform, I think was... amazing. It was like a really, really great experience.
Yeah, it was a good experience for me too. And like you knew that I was going through some things at that time as well. I wasn't well, and so to be able to, you know, pull that poem out in that time for me, that was just really, really difficult and dark. And, you know, I didn't have anything really good happening at that time. And that poem, it was really almost healing for me.
Yeah.
And and, you know, when you put your artwork out there, you never know what the consequences of it are going to be, or who it's going to impact, or, you know, what's going to happen with it. And here we are, you know, months later, we did that project it was the summer.
Yeah.
And over Christmas, you know, my grandfather was really sick in the hospital, and I think we had been talking at that time, but he was dying, and my parents went, and he is hard of hearing, and so he doesn't really hear very well. My parents went and bought him this thing that he could put in his ear so that he could hear. And the first thing they did was to show him your film and my poem.
Wow.
And, you know, there he was on his deathbed, and he looked at them and he said, "She's going to be all right." And for him to, you know, he always worried so much about me, and for that film, for him, resonated with him, and he thought, you know, like, she's doing something, and she's passionate, and she's going to be okay. And, you know, he died a few days later. So it's just like, you know, one of those full circle moments where you just don't know how something is going to impact other people or what impact it's going to have on the world.
I didn't know that, though.
Yeah.
And that's one thing about you. Like, I mean, it's good. It's actually great. It's something I need to learn. You put your life in silos. So it's like, this thing is happening, and just these people will know. And, like, you know, till you shared this, I didn't know. I know that, you know, you're having that tough time, but I didn't know. And while we're working on How Will You Honor Your Land, I knew you were dealing with something, but I didn't know how intense it was. It's like you are okay handling everybody's mess. Just put it on me. But if you have a headache, you don't even want to say anything. Or if you are dealing with the whole world on your shoulder, that's when you smile the most. I don't know how you do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
I don't think it's a work in progress. It's like it's like you've mastered that, because you still go ahead and do your work. You still go ahead and be a mom, and your relationship is great, and you still do have time to write these things you write. It's like,
I think the thing for me is
actually.
that, like, relationships are so important to me. So when I make a new relationship, like, we had just met and we were working on this project, and you know, I would be on my deathbed and I would still be writing this poem, because, you know, I care about other people, and I you know, I don't want to let other people down, I think, is what it comes down to. So, you know, I know when I have to say no. You know, I do have some boundaries in that way, but you know, when I'm meeting new people and building new relationships, and especially because, you know, Andre had introduced us, and Andre is so important to me, such a special person in my life. And so, yeah, I know when to say no, but I know when I have to just step up and just be there for the people that I say I'm going to be there for.
Yeah, and you are. And not just me with my film or the poem or your, like, with all these women in the prison system. Yeah. Man, you know, the world needs more Ashleys, really, you know, because I'm serious. Here's the thing for me, it's easier to take care of your things, or it's easier to do something nice if there's an award at the end or there's income or something. But these people that you help daily are never really going to be able to give you, like, some financial reward or something. I don't even know how much you make, but I know that people are exactly. I know that working in, like, things like that. It's like, okay, you know. So it's like you're not doing it you're doing it because it means something to you.
Yeah.
And how did it even start? Like, you know, so you went to school in Toronto, you had a kid, you came back and, like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna be a superhero for all the women in jail.
I mean, I think it happened for a number of reasons, but, you know, it wasn't my first career choice. I was in university here in Halifax. I went to SMU years ago, and I hated it. And I'm the kind of person that I like excitement. I like change. I like to know that, you know, I like the busyness of things. And so I was really bored with it. And so I dropped out and I packed a bag and I moved to Toronto and you know, quit my job and I landed there and, you know, had some really hard experiences there and ended up in a really really violent and abusive situation. And I think that experience, taught me a lot about myself. And then I had my daughter. And when I had my daughter, it really brought me back to, it really grounded me. I was like, okay, I need to do something with my life here. I love this little girl and I need to provide for her, and I'm not going to be able to do it doing what I was doing. And so I went back to school. And it just seemed, I was literally just like, what program can I pick? It wasn't like I was like, I want to work with women in prison, or I want to, be in social services. I just was looking through the programs, and I applied to a few different ones, and I got accepted to the social services program. And, I believed that door was supposed to open for me, and so it did. And I took the program, and, then that's where sort of I realized that I had all of these skills. And I knew sort of what I wanted to do with them, and what field I wanted to be in, and where I wanted to work. And so it just, it happened very naturally, but it came from a place of pain, and a place of, I've had these difficult experiences, and this is what I would have needed if someone was going to be there for me. And so how can I give that back to the world now? And so that's kind of how it happened. And I started working in mental health in Toronto, and then, I wanted to be close to home because I had my daughter, and I wanted her to know her family because all my family is here. And so I came back here, and then I did end up going back to school at the Mount.
I kicked ass. You're super humble too, because, man, you're like top of your class.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, it was full circle for me, because when I was at SMU, I hated it. It was just, I didn't connect to it, and I didn't connect to any of the people there. It didn't click for me. But when I went to the Mount, it was just like such a welcoming place to be, and the professors all, they're all very strong, intelligent women. Al Jones was one of my professors, and she was so inspiring. All of them, like every professor I had, I really built a strong relationship with, and I enjoyed the material, learning about, the oppression of women and the history of women. It was a really fulfilling experience. So I enjoyed it. I liked going to school. I liked doing my assignments, and it was connecting so nicely to the work I was doing in the community. So it just made sense, and that's why I'm trying to go back.
I know. So thanks for coming out, but I'm not going to let you go without reading a poem. Come on.
Okay.
You gotta read something.
Okay. All right, so I guess I'll do prison tables.
Yes. Yeah. So that I can finally start writing that film, so we can go shoot it.
Someday.
No, soon.
Yeah, soon. A woman sits across from me. A table between us, yet only her freedom idles between us. Her emotions start to flow. At first they are slow, but as each memory, disparity, bruise, and injustice surface, the tears fall recklessly down her cheeks as she struggles to find her purpose. She looks across the table and tells me that she feels worthless. Her story will break your heart, and it is unique to her, but it is the same story that I have heard each time I sit at this table. She was a victim of gender violence, racial profiling, discrimination. She grew up surrounded by hate. She is a survivor of rape. She went to school hungry, a child of poverty, a baby girl born into a life designed to place her at the back of the line, so she automatically became a minority and was never given priority. But she is not the mistakes that she has made. She is not a behavior. She is a prisoner in a jail that stretches far beyond the edges of this table. This table represents the obstacles that she has to overcome, but she has been locked up by a life that she can't escape from. See, they put her in general population, tucked away from civilization. She did the crime, and now she must pay her debt back through dead time. But who does the time for the crimes against her? Who feels all the pain that she has had to endure? Is society prepared to disarm and undo the harm and give her the tools to succeed, to conceive a life free from struggle and defeat? Who is able to reconcile a world of betrayal and take back a past that she lays down on this table? See, this isn't a poem just about her and this prison. It is about the inequity of a society that we all live and breathe in. I sit at this table and I know that she is capable, her spirit unbreakable, all of her hopes and dreams are attainable. She must be given the opportunity to heal from all that trauma that she has never been permitted to feel. She is not just a byproduct of a broken system. She is not just a mental health condition or a woman with an addiction. She is a woman who longs to contribute to a society that has criminalized her and then stigmatized her, yet she is still willing and able to bring herself to this table. She seizes every opportunity to fight for her life despite the fact that we have stripped her of her human rights. The right to a fair chance, to put her mistakes behind her and change her circumstance. And we could learn from her resiliency and her tireless efforts to preserve her dignity, but we have kept her in captivity and punished her for her delinquency when she has the ability to become a success story. And so I push down that table and stand up with her in solidarity. We must break down these tables and deconstruct systemic failures, stop handing out life sentences and writing women off as menaces, and take a closer look at the social determinants of these so-called criminal occurrences. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to go make that film.
This is the Blackout Podcast. Thanks for listening.